This is WWE superstar Drew McIntyre, and you're listening to the WWE Podcast.
The champ is
the one that everybody wants, me.
It's going to WrestleMania. Claymore!
Austin 316 says I just whipped your ass. This is my iron. You're going to acknowledge me.
Welcome to the current state of WWE, everybody. On this Monday, March 13th, 2023, we've got Anthony DeMarco with us, as we do every single Monday, to talk about the world of wrestling, where it's at. And this week, we've got the same type of conversation about the main event of WrestleMania, but what we'll want to do this time is book WrestleMania from 39, from the main event, specifically the main event, from then through SummerSlam, who the opponents could be, if Roman drops the belt, that kind of thing, how we would want to see the main event go, not necessarily how we think it will go. Predictions will be upcoming in the next week or two, but for now, it's kind of what we'd want to see moving forward. So, Anthony, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me, man. As always, I think we're going to have a lot of fun today. And what are we, less than 3 weeks out from WrestleMania? It's kind of a cool topic that we have at hand today, given how close we are to the biggest show of the year.
It really is, and I know that we talk about the main event every single time we talk. It's impossible not to, but for this time, it's a little different, given not what we think is going to happen, but what we'd want to see happen. How, if we could move the chess pieces, what would they look like from SummerSlam to Mania? And I guess I'll start with you, not a full picture, because I want to be able to chime in on your thoughts. But as we get to WrestleMania 39, assuming that the main event is not changing, and I don't think at this point it is, nobody's being interjected, it looks like it's one-on-one with Cody versus Roman for the Undisputed Championship. We get to that match. I guess just looking at WrestleMania 39, the main event, how would you book this thing? Who would win? Would there be interference? That kind of thing.
Well, I think that as of right now, you're probably going to see some level of interference, but if it were up to me, I would just have a one-on-one match clean. I think that at WrestleMania, having limiting interference for the main event should be paramount above all else. Kind of like what we saw last year with Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar, although that was just a very bad and predictable outcome. And I do think that Cody Rhodes and Roman Reigns, for as bad as, or as underwhelming rather, as I think that the build has been, I think that the in-ring match is going to be really quality here. And I think we may see arguably Roman Reigns' best WrestleMania match to date because of how good Cody Rhodes is and both of their respective ring psychologies. But I think that Roman Reigns, if it were me, I would book Roman Reigns to go over clean, no interference from the Usos, and then you could kind of play off that in kind of like the crumbling of the bloodline post WrestleMania. So Roman goes over clean, and then to kind of steal one of your ideas, I think The Rock shows up and sets up maybe a build until next year's WrestleMania.
Yeah, I can't argue with that, and that was one of my ideas. So without duplicating that, because that would have been my what I would have said if you didn't. So, well, that's fine, because again, what I think is going to happen and what will happen and what I would want to happen is obviously two different things. And looking at this, I agree. I mean, this cannot be a bad match. I think it's going to probably go 20 minutes, and it should. Like, there's going to be some great ups and downs in this match, great near falls, very believable near falls. Ultimately, do I think Cody's going to win? Probably not, but we can talk about predictions in the coming weeks. As far as what I would do, I think you're right. I mean, one-on-one, I would actually have a stipulation that Adam Pearce is forced into, or somehow Cody's able to manipulate, where no interference from the bloodline, and if there is interference, the title changes hands automatically. It'd be one of those things, because the interference deal is so predictable, and we've seen it play out for almost 3 years now. It's almost the same thing every time, almost. And so this would be, I think, a bit of a blemish on the main event. Like, I don't care if you do screwy finishes like this in the, on B pay-per-views and things like that, but for Mania, it's kind of a higher level of respect for the main event, and to have interference in this, if it's bloodline, I think would kind of, not only have we seen it a zillion times, but it would take away from what the main event means. It's one-on-one. Who's the true better man? So I would have agreed, no interference. And you're thinking, okay, Roman's screwed because, he's not going to have any backup. He's not going to have any help. So I would agree, no interference during the match, but I do think Roman, and how I would book it, what I would do is have him in some kind of behind the referee's back victory. I know that, and there's an argument to be made of him clean beating Cody, but I think maybe he'll luck himself into a situation where he's able to use a foreign object, brass knucks, a chair shot, referees down. What do we do? So I would say some kind of hook or crook way where, Cody is in a vulnerable position, the referee gets bumped, and then Roman uses brass knucks or some kind of object and knocks Cody out and then hits a spear. A referee comes to 1, 2, 3, and people are losing their minds, pissed off. And then I would agree. You could have The Rock come out and stare at Roman, hit a rock bottom, or just stare at him, and then point to Mania, and then do the John Cena 27-28 deal of challenging him a year out. That way, it gives The Rock enough time to clear his schedule. That is no longer an excuse. It gives him a year to physically get in shape. That's more than enough time. And it have people say, okay, well, if he has the belt or not, it's Rock Roman at WrestleMania 40. That's something you could really look forward to, and certainly you could keep Roman heel that long. So I would agree you could do that. The other thing I would do if we don't have the same idea is have Brock Lesnar, and this sounds insane, and I know that a lot of people have made fun of this, and rightfully so, but I had this idea the other day where I'm like, what if Brock Lesnar, who's not being utilized at all, I mean, this WrestleMania, he's being paid probably the most out of any star on the roster, and he's in a match with Omos. Assuming Brock resigns, why not have Brock Lesnar interfere on Roman's behalf? He's not part of the bloodline, so if that stipulation's invoked, he's not part of the bloodline. Brock Lesnar interferes and costs Cody Rhodes the match, and you have kind of a two-man power trip a la Stone Cold and Triple H from 2002 of, oh my God, Brock Lesnar just joined the bloodline. Like, who the hell could stop them, right? Like, so it's a wild thought, but why not put Brock Lesnar right back into something real, into something serious? Get the good old cowboy, feel good, off the farm look of Brock Lesnar and put him into something serious and have him make him earn his damn paycheck. That's what I would do as well. That's another option.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think you've been kind of beating that drum ever since Brock returned, 18 months ago at this point. It just, I've heard rumblings that Brock may be on his way out of WWE. And that's kind of one of the reasons why I did my retro show this last week on his top 5 WWE moments, if in fact this is his swan song. But I do think kind of involving Brock in some kind of main event level capacity would be a good move, because let's be honest here, Brock Lesnar has felt rather inconsequential for quite some time, pretty much since SummerSlam when he lost to Roman Reigns in the last man standing match. And, not to say that, you want Brock to keep, going on a year and a half long title reigns where he shows up once every 2 months, but there is something about trying to keep the integrity and the respectability and the lineage of the Brock Lesnar character, right? You will still want him to be that significant force. So I would be all in favor of Brock Lesnar being involved in the main event, joining forces with Roman Reigns. But I think one way or another, we're both in lockstep that Roman Reigns should return, and it should retain, and it shouldn't be directly at the because of the Usos. I remember the triple threat match 2 years ago at WrestleMania with Edge, Roman Reigns, and Daniel Bryan, and I remember thinking how over involved Jey Uso was in that match, and it really kind of took away from what Roman Reigns was. But I just think we are both in agreement that Roman Reigns should walk out as champion.
Yeah, I would agree. That's how you and I would both book this. And they have now officially on Raw, I think it was, or maybe it was SmackDown, I don't know, that Paul Heyman mentioned 1,000 days. It has been verbalized. It is now on WWE TV. He said for nearly 1,000 days. So here we go. They're not going to get 95% of the way and not do it. I mean, because they know they're never going to have this opportunity again, at least in the next 10 years, I don't think, for someone to go on this long of a run and be able to say someone was champion for 1,000 days. That is another big thing, is they're going to be 950 days around WrestleMania. You can't get another 50 damn days out of it. And Cody Rhodes is the one to really beat him? Really? I mean, so yeah, they've already now put that in the minds of fans, and you can have the announcers start to talk about it as well. But you and I are on the same page here. If Cody Rhodes wins, I won't be shocked. I won't be like, oh my God, that is the worst move ever. I don't think it will be just the worst move they've ever done, but it'd be head scratching, no doubt about it. And I've heard the same rumblings about Brock too. about him leaving. But what's weird about that report and so many others that have come out over the last several months is you'll hear a shocking report about WWE selling to Saudi Arabia, or Vince is back in charge of creative, or Brock Lesnar's leaving, and then, or Stone Cold got offered a massive amount of money to face Roman Reigns. And then about like 12 hours later or less, you'll see a completely conflicting report, like instantly. And it's like, what the hell is going on? So I saw the same thing with Brock. You'll hear these massive reports come out and then they're disputed like hours later. So I don't know if that's true. I heard the same thing. Brock saying his goodbyes at Raw, whatever. But Brock has his contracts from Mania to Mania. And I don't know if Brock Lesnar has resigned or he hasn't. But if he hasn't, you got to make the most out of Brock Lesnar. You got to make the most out of Brock. And it's not having a match with Omos at WrestleMania. Let's be honest. It's not in these comedic segments where he's this happy-go-lucky cowboy. Bring it back to Brock Lesnar, the badass, where he's serious and he's just in destruction mode. He's not trying to make jokes. Like, that's my favorite version of Brock. I know people like this one too, but I don't. And I think that you're not getting the most out of Brock. So put him with Roman Reigns. He doesn't need to be on the show every week, and he certainly wouldn't be. But he could be that massive enforcer to the tribal chief. He doesn't have to be in submission to him. That wouldn't be in line with Roman's or Brock's character. But imagine if those two joined forces. So not only did the bloodline, when you thought they were all disintegrating and falling away, but not only are they back together, but they're even stronger than they were before everything happened with Sami. So like people would lose their minds and who's going to stand up to them? And you could obviously have The Rock come out or whatever. So I'll let you respond to that, and then we can continue with our thoughts moving forward.
Well, 100%. I think that you really have to give the tracksuit, like, killing machine Brock one last run. And look, I obviously prefer the original Brock Lesnar, but I'm not completely against the Cowboy Brock that we've seen over the last year and a half. I think that it was important for him to show a lot of fans that if he wanted to do a separate character, he could be passable in that role. And yes, is he still kind of awkward on the mic? Is it kind of bizarre and odd and somewhat off-putting seeing Brock Lesnar as this happy-go-lucky guy who doesn't give a you-know-what? Yeah, like it does kind of compromise what the entire Brock Lesnar character has historically been, but I haven't minded it. But I am in lockstep with you that I think before he does actually ride off into the sunset, I would like to see him back as a killing machine, and ideally with Paul Heyman. And because Paul Heyman is joined at the hip with Roman Reigns, I think a two-man power trip would be a pretty cool sight to see.
All right, well, moving forward, I mean, I'm not going to go from pay-per-view to pay-per-view because right now I think there's WrestleMania Backlash May 6th, and then they're talking about a Saudi Arabia event at the end of May, which would be the exact day on a Saturday, I think it's May 27th, that would hit Roman Reigns' 1,000th day as champion. So I guess, I mean, you don't have to give me specifics on the exact card for each pay-per-view, but looking at May, as we head towards SummerSlam, if you booked exactly as you said, Rock shows up, he goes face-to-face with Roman, and then we have a 1-year build to Rock Roman at WrestleMania 40. How would you book, though, the next month or so heading towards SummerSlam within the bloodline? Who would be Roman's challengers, that kind of thing?
So post-WrestleMania, there's only one more pay-per-view between WrestleMania and him reaching 1,000 days, correct?
There'd be Backlash, which I think is just called actually Backlash this year, which is great. And then and it's proposed, and I got to double check on this, but the 1,000th day. So about 4 weeks later, there would be an event on May 27th in Saudi Arabia, which would be Roman's exact 1,000th day as champion.
Wow. It's crazy how it's falling.
I know.
Well, as for Backlash, and this isn't an original idea, I saw this proposed online as a potential rumor, so I'm kind of stealing it, but I thought that it was good. I saw a rumor that it was going to be Roman Reigns versus Cody Rhodes versus Seth Rollins in a triple threat match to Main Event Backlash. And post-Backlash, or post-WrestleMania is when they were going to do a superstar shake-up of sorts, or just kind of configure the brand split. So in my mind, I'm saying if they're going to re-emphasize the importance of the brand split, maybe they're going to start talking about re-splitting the titles. So assuming Roman Reigns in my fantasy world retains both championships, I would make the Backlash main event the triple threat just for the WWE championship, and I would probably make Seth Rollins walk away as WWE champion. And that way you still keep the 1,000 days going with the Universal Championship. And again, I know this is probably what they're not going to do, but it's what I was going to do because this reign started with the Universal Championship. I would have Roman drop the WWE Championship to Seth Rollins in a triple threat match with Cody Rhodes, get Seth Rollins his much-needed world title victory, the first time that he will have held the world title in well over 4 years, I think 4 years, or 3 years, 3.5 years, and that way you could start building towards Seth and Cody to potentially main event SummerSlam. And then you still keep Roman Reigns' title reign going for 1,000 days. Because one thing that I think has kind of been misleading, and they've kind of done this with the Usos as well, is, he's coming up on 1,000 days as undisputed Universal WWE Champion. Well, no, he's coming up on 1,000 days as Universal Champion. He's only been WWE Champion for about a year now. So I think that it's also me kind of playing on the fact that they tend to insult our intelligence a bit and pretend that we don't realize these things. But if it were me, it's a way to have your cake and eat it too, as we've talked about numerous times.
Yeah, that's a good point. That he's only the streak started when he was just holding the Universal. So if they were being accurate, they could say he's been world champion, or he's I don't know. Like there's a way to kind of say capture a word. I think maybe world champion is the best way that encapsulates the Universal and or WWE. So that probably would be more accurate. Yeah, you're right. But I like that main event. I like that triple threat. I mean, you and I have been advocating for Seth Rollins to be a WWE champion for like 3 years now, and it's long overdue. And having him be the top of the Raw brand is absolutely phenomenal and would work very well. He's over as hell as a babyface right now and all that. And certainly he could carry the brand. He would be there every week. It'd be a lot of fun and resolve so many problems that you and I have talked about a million times. Now, assuming that's not the main event and taking it a different direction with how I would book it, again, great idea. I think I saw that circulating too, but they could also do a straight one-on-one rematch with Cody and Roman. They could do that. I guess I've heard also rumors of Randy Orton coming back. And if Randy Orton comes back, you could have Randy versus Cody versus Roman at Backlash, because Randy Orton has a bone to pick with Roman Reigns, as nearly it's been a year since Randy went out last May, I think it was, and the story was that the bloodline took him out and injured him. So you could go that route, but also there's history between Randy and Cody. Maybe Randy's the one to cost Rhodes at Mania, who knows? But there's history there with their previous factions. So I think Randy Orton and that whole deal could be a hell of a lot of fun in that triple threat if it's not Seth Rollins. And then, again, you bring somebody who's champion over to Raw. I totally am with that 100%. At that same time, there's a sub-storyline going on. And again, by the way, Roman would drop the belt, the WWE, I'm with you, at that event, at Backlash. But the subplot would be that since the Usos are heavily favored to lose the tag championships to Kevin and Sami at Mania, Roman is starting to berate and belittle the Usos more and more every week. The tension continues to build, and we know that we're eventually going to get Jey Uso versus Roman for, at that point, the Universal Championship. So I think that's kind of something that's going to be boiling a little bit every single week. Roman talking about how they've disgraced and dishonored the family, that they've lost the titles to Sami and Kevin, and you can see the anguish and the anger on the face of Jey Uso every week. And it won't boil over until probably the Saudi event, where I could see Roman versus Jey Uso for the Universal and or, if it's somehow, the Undisputed Championship. So that's moving forward to the next event. I could see Jey versus Roman for the championship in Saudi Arabia.
I could see that as well. Like, I don't know about, because isn't that supposed to be a King of the Ring pay-per-view that they're going to be bringing back for the Saudi Arabia?
I'm going to Google this while you're talking. Yeah, it's got, yeah.
I think that's what I saw, or Queen of the Ring. Like, they're going to do the whole tournament in one night. But I would 100% see that, and that kind of could lend itself to the whole dissolution of the bloodline. The one thing that I would wonder is, do you think that Jey Uso could be a serious threat to dethrone Roman Reigns for the Universal Championship?
I think he could. I mean, it's not impossible. Here's the thing. Once we get past that 1,000 days, to me, all bets are off. Everything that we've talked about for the last 3 years of, well, they got to get to the 1,000, and I don't know, they got to get here and there. Once they get to the 1,000, I don't want to say it's the finish line, but it's a massive milestone, because where do you go from there? Like, where do you go? I mean, 1,500, like, are we going to do it in 500-day increments? Like, where, at that point, once you pass 1,000, like, I mean, not to say who cares, but you've reached 1,000 damn days. What's the next mile marker? 2,000? Like, so after that, I think there's a exponentially higher chance of whoever challenges him past that 1,000 days is going to capture the belt. But I would say if Jay is going to be the last hurdle for Roman to jump over to get to that 1,000, then Jay's probably going to lose, because they wouldn't get him to 1,000 days and then lose on that 1,000th day. I don't think that they would do that, unless you'd say, well, he lost it, but he still crossed that $1,000-day mile marker, so he still is a 1,000-day champion, but he lost it on that 1,000th day. I mean, there's, I guess, technicalities here. But if Jay is going to stand in the way of the 1,000, then no, he has no chance of beating him on May 27th in Saudi Arabia if that event happens. So, but at the same time, Jey Uso, he got massive reactions. I mean, like, people, when he saw him hug Sami Zayn, that was a huge pop on Raw a couple of weeks ago. And every time he showed up, he got a massive babyface reaction. He even still seems conflicted in his explanation. He said, I had to do it, guys. It wasn't like I was, completely undermining Sammy. I never really liked him, all that. He's just telling us, what would you guys do? I have to do this. So there is some inside of him still some, turmoil of saying, I don't like what Roman's doing, but I have to do this. But so I think absolutely that there is
that.
It's all good. I think that was Smash Mouth.
It was literally like I just opened my phone. That scared the shit out.
All good. To answer your question, I think Sami Zayn, or rather Jey Uso, is a real hurdle if it's after the 1,000 days, not before.
Yeah, oh my God, Smash Mouth comes over the top rope to slide me the sledgehammer while you're cutting a promo.
Good.
But yeah, it was like Shrek was starting in here. But no, I think you're absolutely right. The story they're telling with Jey Uso is really brilliant, and it goes all the way back to the beginning of the whole Roman Reigns storyline in the fall of 2020. And it's kind of crazy to think about how it all started with Vince McMahon, and, Triple H has continued on with this. And one thing, I've heard you talk about this a bit, and I've been thinking this as well. I don't even think it's a question anymore that Vince McMahon has a hand in creative. I don't think that anyone could even deny that. But how involved and how powerful do you think he is? And are you fearful at all as to what that answer may be?
Currently or moving forward, you mean?
I guess between now and SummerSlam, based on because that's kind of like the time frame we've been talking about. Well,
I think, there's no doubt about it. Let's all be honest. It feels like Vince. It smells like Vince, even if they're not telling us it's Vince. And they're not going to do that because it's WrestleMania season. They want to make it on the outside to all their sponsors, all their fans, everyone looking like all is quiet. And you noticed all that news that came out a couple of months ago. Oh, they're being sold. It was turmoil. Stephanie leaves. Oh my God. Everything was just chaos. And I think they've decided to go radio silence during WrestleMania season because they're trying to make it, just kind of have an outward appearance of, guys, everything's calm. Nothing's going on. We're not selling. We're all good. And then I'm telling you, after WrestleMania is over, and they can just kind of let the floodgates open about what's really been going on the last couple of months, it's going to open up probably within a week or so of WrestleMania being over. I'm telling you that's what's going to happen. I just feel it. But Vince is in charge. I think to some degree, I think they're going to, is he still the guy that is the end game? I don't think so, but I think he still has heavy influence because people just have, a lot of people backstage have still a lot of respect for him, and he's been there for 40, 50 years, and they know that he still carries that innate respect, even if he's not quote unquote named head of creative. Even though he doesn't have the title, I think he still has the respect and still has the swagger. He's Vince McMahon. So when he says something, they don't have to listen if he's not truly in charge, but some people maybe still have the reflex of feeling like they have to. And I'm sure Triple H is in a very awkward position. of hearing Vince give input, but if he doesn't feel like going with what Vince wants, maybe he doesn't, but he feels pressure like he still should. It's probably a very interesting backstage dynamic going on right now, but Vince has some influence. There's no doubt about it. Based on some of the segments we've seen over the last several weeks with the comedy, especially Otis going back to kind of being the jolly, old Saint Nick character of just being, a comedy character, and Omos versus Brock feels so Vince-esque.
Oh, yeah.
That is Vince McMahon's wet dream, is Omos versus Brock Lesnar. You just feel it. That kind of thing. Like, there's been, and some of the segments that are bad comedy, you're like, ooh, that feels like Vince is here. Then Vince probably is. So I think he has some degree of influence, and I don't think the fans who don't want to see Vince back, I think the most don't, they aren't letting us know that, even though the product shows that he is. So I'm concerned. Yes, I am concerned moving forward. And I don't know how long they're going to keep it under wraps. That's going to be the interesting part to me.
Yeah, and you make a good point that everything just went dead silent after news broke overnight in early January that they sold to the Saudis. And now you hear that they're planning this big pay-per-view in late May in Saudi Arabia. But I guess I kind of relate to the timeline that we're talking about to SummerSlam. I've been long thinking that Roman Reigns is going to drop the Universal Championship, if not both, at SummerSlam. But in my fantasy booking, it would just be the Universal title. Your main event at SummerSlam is Seth Rollins versus Cody Rhodes. And actually, more so that I'm kind of thinking about it now with Seth Rollins and Cody Rhodes, because Cody Rhodes has already beaten Seth Rollins 3 times in a row clean, which I think was a massive mistake. I think that if you would have had Seth Rollins beat Cody Rhodes inside Hell in a Cell and you have Cody have that out of the torn pectoral, it would have just worked for so many different reasons and given, another reason to revisit this storyline. But because Cody has gone over clean 3 times, if you were to go Cody Rhodes versus Seth Rollins at SummerSlam, do you think it would be better for Cody to go in as champion and Seth Rollins get the moment on Cody, or reverse?
Let's see. I got to go with what I want, not what WWE would do. I would want Cody going in as champion with Seth winning there, because I think winning it on a stage is bigger than going in on a big stage, because winning it creates a bigger moment than just being, you're just being introduced as champion. But I think Seth winning on a bigger stage, for being a Seth Rollins fan, would be a better idea. Now, Cody, they could do the opposite, and they could still have Cody win off Seth Rollins, but I don't, as you said, the amount of times that Cody Rhodes has beaten Seth Rollins is just flat out embarrassing. Seth Rollins, through those 3 losses, and they were going to go on a 4th if that injury didn't happen. It's just Seth Rollins needs a victory, and he needs a big one like that. And Cody Rhodes is undefeated coming into this event. Cody Rhodes has not lost a match since he debuted and re-debuted in WWE, and I don't know if they're going to talk about that a lot. I don't know if that's going to be a narrative, but no, that's what I would do. I'd have Seth Rollins win at SummerSlam.
So assuming that you have, in some capacity, Seth Rollins versus Cody Rhodes main eventing the Raw side of things for the WWE Championship, which I think is absolutely imperative to get a World Championship back on Raw, and we're assuming in my fantasy booking that Roman Reigns holds the Universal Championship to SummerSlam, and Jey Uso isn't the one to dethrone him, who do you think is that guy? My gut, for some reason, says Gunther, just because of how much of a meteoric rise he's been on, but he's also a heel. Maybe you want to milk whatever you still have out of this Intercontinental Championship reign. For you, assuming you want to end Roman Reigns' championship reign as Universal Champ at SummerSlam, and that would mark 3 years almost to the day that he's champion, and by that point, you're well over 1,000 days. Who would be that guy?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. Again, a few names come to mind. Gunther does come to my mind. That the problem with that is that, would you really want to go from heel to heel? If Gunther is still a heel at that point, that's the only problem. Otherwise, that's a massive match that's going to happen. Randy Orton's in the conversation if he's back, given the story, as I mentioned earlier. Sami Zayn is still in the conversation, although if he's tag champions with Kevin Owens at that time, if he still is, then that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. He, being a dual tag team and Universal Champ doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But if he's not, Sami Zayn could win it at SummerSlam. I think that's absolutely possible. Kevin Owens is kind of a dark horse. He could, but how many times has Kevin Owens lost to Roman Reigns? It's embarrassing at this point over the last few years. So I think that those are really the candidates. Gunther, Sammy, like maybe Seth, but if Seth's involved with Cody, then no. I mean, so like that's really kind of your pool. I can't see anyone else outside of those individuals that even come SummerSlam would even make any sense. Jey Uso, I guess, if you want to string it out that long, and he doesn't face him at the Saudi event, could face Roman at SummerSlam. It's going to really depend on too, like how the crowd reacts to the bloodline moving forward. Do they try to test Jay as a star, as a single star? Do they try to test Jimmy? Do they try to test Solo? I mean, like, I don't know. I mean, plus Brock Lesnar, if he's involved, I mean, God knows we don't want to see a Roman Brock match again, though. So, yeah, that's really your pool of candidates, are those like 3-4 guys. I don't see anyone else. If we get to SummerSlam and Roman's still champion, like, who is there anyone else that we're not thinking of that could be that guy?
I mean, I'm really starting to think, but like a lot of these like up and coming guys are heels right now. Like I kind of for a split second thought of Austin Theory, but he's a heel. You think of maybe Bobby Lashley, but like, would he be the right guy? And I don't even know if he's a heel or a babyface right now. He's kind of like a tweener. Like, I mean, I would like if we were having this conversation 3 or 4 months ago, I think Bray Wyatt would have been a good candidate, but at this point in time, like, I think that it's completely cooled off his return. Like, I guess he's one guy we could kind of zero in on. Like, we know the absolute just the fumbling of his return that's gone on here. But, like, do you think that there's any chance that they could rekindle some of his initial magic and he could be a candidate?
I think they could. Bray Wyatt, as we've said in the past so many times, that he is an intriguing character. There's so much to Bray that you just watch, even if the story sucks, which has been so confusing over the last couple of months. You still watch him, and you're still watching and hinging on every word, and you're like, I still don't know what he said, but this is great. And so, yeah, they could, because if they just simplify the character, stop making him go all over the place in 30 directions, they could make Bray a legitimate contender. Now, the question would be, even if they get to that point, do you really want Bray Wyatt to be the one to beat Roman? I mean, even though there is a backstory there, he's the one that lost to Roman 3 years ago at SummerSlam. I mean,
he's the last Universal Champion.
Exactly. There's a nice symmetry there, and they could have a great story, but is Bray in the right headspace? Is he capable of having a really good match? We still haven't seen that yet. Do people care about his character like they used to? Like, there's a lot of factors and variables. It's possible because he's that good of a talent, but I don't think it's probable, but I think it's possible.
For me, I don't know why I just keep coming back to Gunther, and like, you know what the thing is about Gunther is that when he speaks, I don't feel like he's a heel because he talks logically, and he always talks about the respect for the sport and the respect for the championship and the integrity of only facing one challenger because he's a champion. Like, when I know he's presented as like a heel with his group and all that, but like when he speaks, do you want to hate this guy?
That's the thing. Like, if someone were to explain to me why we're supposed to hate him, like, what exactly is the reason? Because he's from a different country. He's not from America. I mean,
he's a badass.
Yeah. Like, what's the exact reason? I mean, if you went on the logic, well, he's a foreigner. Okay, well then I guess we're gonna hate Sami Zayn. We're gonna hate Kevin Owens. Like, I mean, just go down the list.
Sheamus.
Yeah, Sheamus. Yeah, just keep going. Like, it doesn't make any sense. So that's, I guess, the reason. And he's got a mean face on him, but his group doesn't even help him cheat to win. Like, so like he's just a badass that has respect for the sport. Why are we supposed to hate him? There's just no reason for it. He doesn't have an entertaining entrance with a lot of lights and he's, a fancy pyro. Is that the reason? He's just a straight up old school throwback. Is that why we're supposed to hate him? Because he's a relic of what pro wrestling used to be? I mean, I guess that's the logic, but that makes me love him even more. That makes me want to see him dominate in the way that Roman Reigns is dominating, and I hope he retains at WrestleMania. I hope he goes on a hell of a tear, and he is right now, but yeah, for us to sit as fans, I want to talk to people that don't like him and ask them why,
Yeah, and I doubt that they would do this, but like we've heard that Roman Reigns is going to go on an extended leave whenever he does drop the championships. Yeah. So like for me, like for whatever reason, if you were to book Roman Reigns versus Gunther, okay, at SummerSlam, for some reason, my mind shot back to Brock versus John Cena at 2014. Do you think that like having Gunther just completely squash Roman and that sends Roman off on like a 5-month absence, and when he comes back, he almost comes back with a vengeance, and then you can kind of book him as a babyface because he was humbled, and then you kind of switch that around. Or he comes back even more vicious than ever, and it kind of goes right into his match with The Rock at WrestleMania. Do you think that would at all be in the cards because of what they did with Brock and John, what is it now, 9 years ago? So crazy to think about. Or do you think that would just completely destroy Roman Reigns' reputation?
Yeah, that's really an interesting conversation to be had, because I would love that. I think that would shock people.
Just squashes
him?
Yeah,
because Roman Reigns, he has not been dominated in a matchup like that. I mean, Brock Lesnar's dominated him for minutes in a match, but not where it's completely start to end, where Roman has a few moves of offense, but generally it's just being completely destroyed. You'd have to build up Gunther a little bit more to have matches like that, so that when that actually happens, it's believable and you're like, oh my God. It would be shocking. It would get people talking. It would be like, oh my God. Like, not only did he not put up a fight, but like, it was a dominating victory, and we have Gunther now as champion. He could absolutely do that. I don't think Roman Reigns would be destroyed, because John Cena wasn't destroyed. I mean, at all. I mean, John Cena, it was just like it didn't happen, because at a certain point, you're Teflon. Like, at a certain point, losses don't really hurt your career. I think Roman Reigns is at that point where even if he went on an extended losing streak, it really wouldn't hurt his career. You'd have to make several years of that, which they won't do. So one loss in a dominating fashion, it's believable, because that's what happens in real sports. Even when you have two massive titans, football, baseball, whatever, sometimes even the team that's at the top of their division gets completely blown out that night. It happens. So it's something that's plausible to happen to Roman. And as you said, have him come back. But I wouldn't do it in a babyface fashion, because, as you said, if he's having an upcoming match with The Rock later in the year, he would go from babyface back to heel. Like, he would go from heel to babyface back to heel. I wouldn't flip him too many times. And I think there's a ton more mileage to get out of him with being a heel than going to babyface right now. So I would keep him heel, even upon the return, have him be more vicious, and then have the fans still continue to boo him going into the Rock program later in Survivor Series and Royal Rumble of 2024. So yeah, that would be a hell of intriguing. Yeah.
I just think that it would add a new wrinkle to his character, because it gives something different. Like, oh my God, how is Roman Reigns going to react when he comes back after being completely squashed? And like, I could even see his visuals of like going into this match and being just like, because his visuals is on point right now. Like, I have to give it to Roman Reigns, like the way he sells things with his facial expressions and just everything about him, his cadence and his promos. But like, I could see it now, like him going into this match like completely unsure, like, what am I really getting into here? And during the match, just being completely manhandled. You put the title on Gunther. Like, I know it's heel versus heel, and you would kind of have to find a way to get Gunther to being a babyface between now and the summertime. But like I said, I don't think that would be that difficult of a transition. There's not a whole lot to dislike about Gunther. So the more I think about it, I think to kind of like put a bow on how I would book things from WrestleMania to SummerSlam, I would have Gunther face Roman Reigns for the Universal Championship and just completely squash him. Because not only do you crown Gunther and then you have another 100% bona fide main eventer for the foreseeable future, and you make that guy in one fell swoop in Gunther, but then when Roman Reigns returns, presumably for his match against The Rock at WrestleMania 40, you have a whole different dimension and wrinkle to his character, and all the more reason for him to be that much more vicious upon his return, and a more intriguing dynamic for his match against The Rock.
And not only, again, does Roman Reigns benefit from this, but Gunther benefits from this in a massive way, because
he's made.
Yeah.
He's made.
Oh yeah. If he's not already there, that would solidify him in forever history of WWE. And I think that having that happen it would hurt no one and help everyone, because again, Gunther would be a made man. People would be talking about this like, wait a minute, oh my God, because most people would go into that match saying, oh, it's going to be competitive. They're going to take each other to the limit. It's going to be physical. It's going to go 20 minutes. And then match ends in 5 minutes, and Gunther just completely destroys him like a Goldberg match with anybody, right? So like, that would be amazing to watch. Gunther, people would probably sit there like the Undertaker's loss at WrestleMania and just sit there and just not know how to react with like their mouths open, like, what the hell just happened? Roman would get past 1,000 days. He's been champion for exactly 3 years. All those nice round numbers would have happened. So yes, that is something that I would sign up for anytime. It wouldn't hurt anyone and help everyone in that scenario. So I'm totally with you on that. And it's a fun way to think about as we get to SummerSlam, and we don't even know what's going to happen in Main Event of WrestleMania, but now I'm like already excited for things that don't exist. So all right, well, any final comments or thoughts to wrap things up?
The last thing I would say, just because you mentioned Goldberg there, is I think Goldberg's best moment in WWE was when he came back and he squashed Brock Lesnar in a minute and a half at Survivor Series 2016. I think that was Goldberg's best match, his best moment. And I don't think Brock Lesnar was hurt by that at all. He got squashed, and he's the king of squash matches. So, I mean, if anyone thinks that it would permanently damage Roman Reigns, I don't think Brock was damaged at all in that match. And I think it was one of the coolest moments of Goldberg's career, too.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. And that was the first, not to get into Goldberg, but I'll just finish on that, is Goldberg in that match. I was actually intrigued upon his return and like, what's this going to look like? We haven't seen them collide since 2004. What is this going to be? This is pretty cool. And yeah, that was a shocking match, a fun match. And that's when most people were intrigued until he just overstayed his welcome, and every match became that. Of course, that's when he overstayed his welcome, as I said. So yeah. All right. Well, man, now I'm pumped for Mania and pumped for our storyline that probably won't happen over the next 6 months. And let everyone know what last show you did. Speaking of Brock Lesnar, for your retro show this past Friday.
Yeah, so I did, in the spirit of Brock Lesnar, and if this is his final swan song, I covered his top 5 moments in WWE going back to the Ruthless Aggression era. Obviously, I think the top moment was kind of undisputed. I don't think that shocked anyone in the least. But, I mean, there were some other moments, like his match against The Rock, his return to confront John Cena. I think there were a lot of cool Brock Lesnar moments going back through all of it. And did you have any thoughts on some of the moments I listed?
Yeah, that SummerSlam one is one that every time I hear is just, I'm like, how did we not get a rematch for this? I mean, how did this? It was what? My God, I don't know how many years ago now. 21 this 21
summer.
21 years. So yeah, exactly. So it's been 2 decades. How did we not get a rematch? The hilarious and kind of exciting thing is it's still possible that we could have them in a ring at some point. Yeah. Rock is kind of in and out of the world of wrestling and is always in good shape, and Brock just doesn't age. So it's not an implausible match that could happen in the next year or two, but yeah, that one to me will always stick with me. And I remember being such a Rock fan during that time. I was not on board with Brock. I was still a Rock fan, and I was so angry that he lost clean to Brock. I didn't understand the inner workings, and I was just watching as a fan.
And that was The Rock's call too.
Yeah, exactly. And so I remember the crowd was turning on The Rock at that point, and they saw the writing on the wall that Brock is really the next big thing, and he was so different and such a monster and worked great and all that the fans just got behind him, and they knew The Rock was out the door anyway. So, yeah, but very good. I really am now excited for WrestleMania even more than I am. And do I think they're going to do any of this? Probably not. But
probably not.
No, probably not. But all right, well, very good. Thanks so much for joining me today. And I will say, next week, guys, I won't be here. I'll be on a bit of a vacation, so. Next Monday, I will be putting up kind of a bit of a throwback show relevant to the time of year, some kind of WrestleMania themed show. So we'll be talking again in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, man. Enjoy your vacation and have a good time.
Thanks. Take care.
You too.
Thanks for listening to the WWE Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast app so you don't miss a show, or head to WWEpodcast.com. And for all of these shows ad-free, head over to patreon.com/WWE Podcast. Until then, we'll see you next time.